Hello, everyone, and welcome to Techsploration, our session to showcase emerging water tech and show how these systems can play a major role in local water management deployed at scale. I'm Cynthia Kohler, WaterNow's Executive Director, and we have a great panel of tech innovators to share their innovations with you today. Before we get going, I'm just going to cover a quick bit of housekeeping. You can answer questions, you can answer them, we can answer them, you can ask them, or make comments in the Pathable chat on the session description page. We're recording this session, so it will be available online as well. And I'm going to make a quick pitch. We'll be sending all of you a short and very easy survey at the end of the summit later today. So thanks in advance for your help in taking just a couple of minutes to fill that out. It makes a big difference to us. With that, we have a great panel, and I'm so pleased to introduce Christina Amador, who will be moderating. Christina serves as Managing Director of Isles Utilities, leading a team that supports utilities in identifying and evaluating best available water technology and solutions. Christina is a graduate of the Water Environment Federation's Water Leader Institute, and she has been recognized by Water and Wastewater Digest as a top water professional under the age of 40. And with that, I will hand it over to Christina.
Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, just to echo, really excited for the panel today and really appreciate everyone joining us here. You can see the lineup of speakers that we have for you, and essentially we'll have the opportunity to hear their perspectives, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A towards the end. So I'd like to start with introducing our first speaker, Paul Vakir. He's the Vice President of Operations at Flow. And just a few remarks on Paul. He is overseeing corporate operations and corporate counsel at the company. And some of his responsibilities span over strategic partnerships, corporate and legal aspects of the company. Prior to joining Flow, Paul was actually a civil litigation attorney practicing business and securities. And interestingly, he left the legal field to start up his own SaaS business. So very entrepreneurial, as well as having that legal background. Paul has had a variety of executive positions, ranging from CEO and COO, and is seen at speaking at prestigious universities such as Harvard and UCLA around his experience. So I'll leave it at that and invite Paul to get us started here.
Thank you for the intro, and thank you everybody for taking the time today. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll have a Q&A afterwards, so I can hopefully be quick. If we were in person, I'd ask for a show of hands of how many people are aware of our Flow's products, and how many of you actually have them installed on your homes. The adoption rate is dramatically increasing over time, as I'm sure all of the different panelists on this conference can attest to. So Flow by Moen is really becoming an all-in-one water security system for a home. And that involves a leak detection and automatic shutoff valve at the water main supply line point to the home, as well as detectors that we now have about a year and a half in market around being able to place them around areas in the home where you would want an immediate shutoff of the water if the water were to touch it. Think behind a supply line to a washing machine, and also drain side or weather ingress issues related to water damage. So thinking underneath the garbage disposal where the garbage disposal might leak and hurt your hardwood floor. Also in an attic or an area where it's going to maybe be exposed to freezing temperatures, or you want to ensure that there isn't water coming in from a window or something to that effect. And then you see this large box product here at the bottom. That's a battery backup, which we can talk about a little bit more in a second. But that's specifically relating to an instance where power is out, how the valve can continue to function and operate, and shut the water off if needed in the event of a critical situation. So gearing toward and continuing to move forward to water security in the entire home, and doing that through leak detection, and then subsequently helping conserve water as well. So go ahead, next slide, please. So the device is a smart device, as I'm sure you'll see with a lot of the other panelists here today and the products in this space. So it communicates through Wi-Fi to the homeowner's phone. We also have multi-family applications for, that are cellular enabled devices for, call it military housing, large complexes, things like that. That's also available too in a more commercial setting. So it's a smart valve, one device, proactively monitoring the home for leaks as small as a drop a minute. And as we talk about that from a utility perspective, how do we help prevent kind of the seepage water and the non-billable water through at least the areas that we can protect from a flow perspective, meaning micro leaks in the home as small as a drop a minute that aren't going to be registered by the meter and things like that. So we can help detect those and help proactively reach out to the homeowner to help them resolve those types of issues. At my house, for example, I currently have a leaking hose bib that is dripping about a drop a minute. And I know that because my flow valve tells me every night that I have a small drip and now I need to just replace the hose bib. But leaks like that are not going to be picked up from a metering perspective, that's, take that across the entire city of Los Angeles where I live. You're going to be talking about a significant amount of water that is non-billable water pushed through the system and that the utility provides energy for it to be able to supply into the system. Next slide, please. So again, this is just a quick conversation around the ecosystem and how the different products fit into the home and really kind of what we're gearing toward from a conservation perspective. So how do you prevent not just water loss, but also water damage? And that's a really kind of nuanced piece surrounding the flow system versus some of the other technology you're going to be hearing about today, which are all fantastic. And that is, we have much greater success as a channel in our overall channel approach to the market through insurance relationships because of the water damage mitigation component, because of the auto shutoff. Utilities is a space where we've had some success, but it is just, based on the cost of the product, needing to have it professionally installed on the home. All of these things make it a little bit more challenging from a direct mass consumer adoption perspective, but one that we believe is ultimately kind of going to shift in that direction as the utilities continue to understand and continue to demonstrate their backing of different types of technology, and then leaving it to the homeowner to decide which one they want to adopt, whether that's us, a company that we're very close with, two companies we're very close with that are on the panel as well today, that being Flume as well as Rachio, friend companies to flows, and just being able to allow the homeowner to pick what is the best solution for them as this whole tide and this whole ecosystem really starts growing. So next slide, please. So one of the interesting pieces about this is the ability to control the water and shut the water off from your phone. And if the connectivity is down, you will start seeing you'll be able to, as long as there's power with the battery backup, be able to shut the water off, in the event of a critical alert through just the devices monitoring and being able to determine that a leak has occurred and then shut the water valve off. So next slide, please. Now, this is what water looks like to the valve, and I love this slide. This is actually my CEO's house over a 2-week span, and it's very clear what usage is what. And you can see at the very top, those large and small bubbles that are looking at the y-axis, you have gallons per minute. That is, 14 to 10. Those are the irrigation events at the house. The size of the bubble is the total water expended during that single event. And you'll start seeing things that overlap. So you'll see a shower occur at the same time as an irrigation event. And then if you look all the way so that it's really clear to see the irrigation, you go below that, those are showers, kind of those bigger bubbles. And then baths, he has 3 kids. So there's a good amount of bathing happening at the house. And then underneath that, you see the 1 GPM events of toilet flushes and sink usage. And then the really, really faint line at the very, very bottom, that's the ice maker. So being able to track those events. And then what you don't see here is the micro leaks that I talked about that are caught during a pressure test through our pressure sensing technology. So next slide, please. When you overlay those 2 weeks over one 24-hour window, you start seeing very consistent usage in the home. And this is including weekends, which is why, especially in an era where we all used to go into the office, you would see a clear drop off in usage, except maybe for the ice maker during the middle of the day. But with as many people in the house as he has and other folks at the home, being able to track this over time, you can really start seeing what normal usage looks like and anomalous events and things like that. So this is how the device works. And then you can set from this consumption goals. And what we do to really help increase the mentality of consumption for our user base is how much water do they want to use? And we'll track them against that consumption goal. We will also track their usage that week against the prior week. So how do they do? Do they use more water or less water? To try to gamify the water usage experience. And we also compare them to similarly situated homes based on the data we have around how much water they're using compared to like homes to make them kind of more communally competitive in that respect. So those types of different ways to now demonstrate this data to the homeowners that hasn't existed in the past. It has for the last couple of years, but not much before that. And being able to then gamify their consumption experience in order to help them become more conservative in their water usage. Next slide, please. So I really like this because this was topical when with what happened, the events that were very unfortunate that happened in Texas a little while back in February. And what you see here is pressure. So you'll start seeing that there's just the average pressure on the left prior to the freeze event. And then during and following the freeze event on the right, you see the pressures dramatically change. And the reason for that is you're going to have breaks in mains, and you're going to have water shut off on a lot of these homes, and the pressure at that instance is going to be nil. So you see a dramatic shift in the pressure. What we would also see, although it's really hard to show on a map versus graphically, is what pressure spikes look like in a home prior to a burst pipe occurring, and how the valve detects that from a pressure point. So those are the kind of the power of pressure being really important as it relates to not only the events that happened in Texas, but also ways to help prevent damage in the home's water system. The following slide, please. So what happened in the Texas event was really interesting from a data perspective as well, because the automatic shutoff rate jumped over 300% following the prior week during the freeze. So, the valves were detecting these critical events and actively shutting off the water and saving a significant amount of water expenditure and also water damage in those properties as well. So it was really interesting for us to see from a data perspective how the shutoff rate increased dramatically because of the freeze events, conversely resulting in a significant amount of water savings from water that would have otherwise been expelled. Another piece just really quickly around this is that we basically just sent out a promo to everybody in Texas about the battery backup, because an issue is the power for the valve. Because you actually have to have power, obviously, to have the thing actuate automatically. And so, we saw a jump of over 500% adoption of the battery backup across the country, actually, because everybody saw what happened in Texas following this event. So really gearing toward water security as that relates to consumption and prevention of damage. That's really what we're about. And we've got some really interesting data to back that up and hopefully help give all of your homeowners and customers and you personally peace of mind as it relates to your water experience. So happy to help answer any questions. I see that what has the pandemic affected the rate of adoption of smart water tech? Yeah, I mean, we've seen, we're growing, well over 100% month over month. So the growth is, I don't know if it's pandemic related, but also I'm sure a bunch of the other panelists can answer this question around just a rising tide and general awareness. The number one problem that we see in the market around water conservation technology is just people don't know it exists. And so if we can start continuing to solve that problem, that's a fantastic step in the right direction, especially through partnerships with utility companies. So thank you very much. I think that's the last slide. Was there one more? Nope. All right, cool. Chris.
All right, that was great, Paul, and thanks for being our first innovator to sort of share your perspective. It's interesting to learn a little bit more about, the water efficiency and conservation angle, but I think Texas and just empowering the consumer at the end in those sort of circumstances is really part of the conversation too. So appreciate that perspective. As we're getting ready to hear from Clay, our next speaker, I just really want to encourage folks to start asking questions in the chat so we can flag that for some of the Q&A towards the end. Part of this session is to really look about how these tools at scale can help holistic water efficiency and management. So I think the dialogue will be really interesting about that in terms of how these solutions can be adopted at scale to have transformational change. So looking forward to your thoughts on that. I'll go ahead and introduce our next presenter. So we're going to Chris with Ratio. Chris is the CEO of the company and co-founder, where he leads the business and guides product development. At Ratio, he's focused on creating solutions that form sustainable relationships with people and water. So Chris, I'll hand it off to you.
Great, thanks. Next slide, please. So this is really cool. Our mission is to make sustainable water use effortless and personally rewarding. And what I love about these conferences is, utilities have been involved in our company's history and DNA since the very start. And I won't spend a ton of time on it, but one of the reason we started our company was back in 2012. We were in our third year of drought here in Denver, and Denver Water did a really great job of a campaign that was called Use Only What You Need. Big orange signs all over town, really talking about how, to reduce your outdoor water usage on grass. I followed the guidelines given out by the utility that changed on a monthly basis. And it was really interesting to engage with my irrigation system that way over the summer, and then also see like how the community was engaging with the system as well. And it seemed to be a big hurdle to take what the utility, Denver Water, was recommending and actually execute that in the field with consumers. And that's where the genesis for this company really came around, was, hey, how can we get just a great, delightful user experience into the controller itself that consumers can use and feel empowered and smart, and help with some of these initiatives that utilities and water agencies have around the outdoors. And that's really packed into our mission statement right there, where the sustainable water use is actually a result of the product being effortless and personally rewarding for the customer. So what we'll see next in the next slide is how that manifested itself in a platform. And so on the left, we have our products that are designed for our customers or for the consumer, and on the right for utilities and water agencies. I won't go into a lot of depth on each one of these. We'll talk about how they all come together in a couple of different types of case studies and programs we've run. But just quickly on the left, that's our flagship product. Obviously, that's our Generation 3, our smart irrigation controller. As its early start was that it actually pulled in weather data and was predictive in what weather was going to happen and how to change irrigation schedules. And it was one of the first to do that at the residential and consumer level. And over the years, we've added tons of new features to it, that just continue to make it easy. And this year, actually, we're excited to be releasing a number of new features, but one probably most relevant here is our new adaptive watering schedule that will make it really easy for the user just to say, hey, I'd like a little more, a little less water for a specific zone, and that will cycle through the schedules, and then we'll actually give them a feedback loop and how that baselines to what they should be watering in terms of evapotranspiration. And just really making it easy to dial that in and communicate with the customer. The next product that we've been working on is our product suite of nutrients for the landscape. Thrive is the umbrella name, and our specific product is called Lawn Champion. And really, it's a microalgae, and it's a replacement for your kind of more traditional synthetic fertilizers. Again, tying to our mission. We really want to reduce groundwater pollution and bring back biology to the yard, so that you're driving water conservation with the controller, and then you're driving biodiversity with the microalgae and feeding the soil. And those two things together really can create a thriving, water efficient landscape, which is our goal. So that's the consumer side. And then on the water agency side, what you have is obviously, the low hanging fruit of providing these controllers at a discounted price to utilities so they can offer it to their customer base at a price that can encourage adoption. So that's something that is, like I said, low hanging fruit and we can do. And on the right is where we continue to build on that platform, providing tools for utilities, one in the form of insights, where agencies can look at their district, look at certain zip codes, see the market penetration for the controller, and also understand and group and filter things by controller start times, how often they're watering, how many days a week they're watering, what types of crops they have in their yard, and durations of schedules and what types of schedules they're on, and on it goes. But what's really nice about that is then you can sort of slice and dice, that data and really come up with customer segments that you'd like to engage for a variety of reasons. And that's really where our Engage is, an email service we provide, where we work with the utility. We look at a group or segment of customers that they would like to engage for something. A simple example would be, getting customers to water at a different time of day. And then having that customer list in a customized email that we send out to those customers to encourage them to change their controller start times in this case, and then reporting back to the agency or water utility on the metrics we saw, from email open rates to actual conversion rates of moving from one start time to another start time, or one schedule time to another schedule time. So that's really kind of the platform at a high level view. And then what we'll do is we'll dive into some use cases. So next, please. Great. So I think we have 3 examples here of different types of initiatives that we've run. On the left, is a pretty straightforward one. If our controllers are saving water, deploy them at scale and get water efficiency at scale. And that was something we were able to do with Fresno, and it was one of our early, very successful programs. Spanish Fork is super interesting. They have a variety of needs, but we kind of classify this as peak shaving. And one was to reduce or, I guess, work with the pressure issues that they had in the district, but also to ensure that they're not watering when wind was coming through the valley. So you kind of had two different variables at play there. And it was really an orchestration of controllers by staggering the controllers in terms of when they would actually be running, and then also helping the customer know what times of day were the right times of day to actually run the controller to optimize water use and not have it be, blown away. And then on the right, Woodbury, Minnesota, that's a really interesting use case for us as well. This is a one where, there was a decline in water quality as water demand went up, as they were pumping water from a variety of different wells of different levels of quality. So, a result of conservation was really, using less water from certain types of wells that maybe had lesser water quality. So conservation actually led to water quality change. And then we'll go into more depth on the Spanish Fork program. Want to go next? So these are just some findings from the initial test run that we did. Now it's 500 controllers back in 2018, and you can imagine how some of this has scaled over time. Obviously, we baselined these homes before we started making changes through engagements. And then we're just going to kind of quickly go over the research that came back. So what's really great here, and this is something we always see, and we'll talk a little bit at the end on why this happens, but we had almost a 60% open rate on email. That's extremely high to send an email and get that type of engagement from the customer. And you can kind of see on the right what that looks like, but it was basically helping the customer understand how windy weather affects, water conservation, and working with that customer to change their start times to avoid watering in the wind. So it's a pretty straightforward, but good open rate there. Next slide, please. And then, with these controllers installed, what we always like to see is not only were we orchestrating controllers, not only were we changing start times in controllers to avoid watering in the wind, as a result of having a controller, customers were saving water, 17% reduction in their overall outdoor water use. Next slide, please. And this is the cool part, the peak shaving. And, with just those 500 controllers in place, and having them being orchestrated so they're not all running at the same time, we were able to reduce peak demand by 0.5%. And you can imagine how that percentage could go up with time and more controllers. So, just a really great proof of concept here at a decent scale of 500 units, and a program that we've always been building on over the years. And next slide, please. And this kind of wraps on where we started, and it's the the two sides of the platform. We've talked a little bit about how some of the tools that we've built benefits and is really great for the utility or the water agency. And here, this is really the customer adoption side, where we've just had really great adoption of the controller over the years. Well over 500,000 homes that we are in and actively watering for. And a lot of this comes down to the design of the product and really focusing on ease of use and delightful features that customers love, with a net promoter score of above 60, CSAT above 95%. The number one controller in the biggest virtual irrigation aisle on the planet on Amazon, and then just continually picked by any sort of third-party resource out there as the best irrigation controller for consumers. And so really, it's just a great recipe to have a product that customers love, that control in certain areas of the country the most water, and then a platform and set of tools that can really help agencies and utilities engage with these customers to continue down that path of water efficiency, or even demand shaping, depending on what the water utility or agency's needs are. Next slide, please. And that is it. If you'd like to discuss any of your goals or would love to engage us on a project, please let us know. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. You covered a lot of ground there, and definitely, I think, have me thinking about on the consumer side, all the opportunities for consumers or those that are have the power to sort of shape their own sort of reality, all the options that they could pursue. So look forward to the discussion a little bit further here towards the end. Especially want to hear more about the collaboration with water utilities that you referenced. So we'll go to our next speaker, and I'd like to introduce Clay Kraus. He is the Vice President of Revenue for Flume. Clay is a product and business development executive at the company, and he leads all revenue related aspects for business, sales, and marketing. Before Flume, Clay was an early employee at Rachio. So I think I'm seeing in the chat from some attendees asking about that. So yes, you're right. There's a connection there. Clay's background is in finance and project management, product management, and actually has banking industry experience. So I'm sure that comes into play here in terms of the finances, which is always a part of the uptake of technology. So Clay, with that, I will hand it off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. Again, my name is Clay Kraus. If you don't mind going on to the next slide here. So first, just starting off, what is Flume? And we'll go on to the next one too. Sorry, just title slide there. Flume is a company that produces a sensor very much similar to Flows in that it captures whole home water use. Our method in doing so is a little bit different. We actually rely on existing water meters, and that's something that makes the installation of the product very easy. We kind of consider it a lower cost plug and play solution for helping homeowners better understand their water use. Having said that, just to kind of reinforce the differences, Flume is not something with any sort of shutoff valve. Instead, we've really designed this product to simply elucidate or kind of better highlight water use trends to homeowners and utilities alike. What we're showing in this diagram here is a traditional water meter in blue, and our device simply strapped right around it. And what we're doing is we're actually reading the magnetic mutations of that meter and inferring exactly how much water is passing through it. That opens up a ton of possibilities in terms of understanding, do I have any leaks in my home? And where is water being used, indoors, outdoors, and by specific fixtures? If you don't mind moving on to the next slide. And of course, it's 2021. Even 6 years ago, 7 years ago, we'd be remiss if it wasn't connected to an app. So the homeowner is able to, really quickly see right from their smartphone exactly how much water they're using. That's what we're showing in this screenshot here. I believe we have it broken out by day, but they can see it at various resolutions going down all the way to 5 seconds. Another really cool thing that we're doing here is we're actually dividing, we call it disaggregation, but we're dividing indoor and outdoor water use to really kind of highlight to that homeowner exactly how much water is being used on their landscape versus inside. And later this year, we'll actually have the ability to disaggregate indoor fixtures, meaning that we'll be able to differentiate water use that happens from a faucet versus a toilet, or any other water using device in the home. We also have a platform for our water utility partners, and I'll get into that in more detail in a sec. But we have a number of water utilities with whom we work that really exclusively market our device to their ratepayers as a tool that allows them to take control of their water use. Utilities see reduced high bill complaints, reduced complaints as a result of leaks, et cetera. Next slide, please. Just to really kind of highlight exactly what that in-app experience looks like, I just wanted to kind of break it down into 3 segments. On the left-hand side here, we have that real-time monitoring. That's essentially the screen that we were showing on the preceding slide. Again, here I can see my water use in a home at all different kind of levels of time resolution, as well as how much water I've used over the course of the month, both indoors and out. A major value prop for Flume is also related to leak detection. We've become very, very good at identifying leaks and really kind of any anomalous water event that we believe is not kind of part of the typical human interaction with water in the home. When we do that, we're sending out push notifications, we're sending out emails, text messages to our users, apprising them of those leaks and bringing them to a dedicated screen in the app where they can see exactly how much water is being used, how much water has been wasted, and they can contact our support team right from there in the app. Our support team is US based. They're actually experts at helping homeowners identify exactly where leaks are, and can help resolve those. And then finally, we have really cool water budgeting capabilities, where a user can actually create kind of a predefined budget to hold themselves to in terms of their overall water use, on a monthly, yearly, daily basis. Next slide, please. So in terms of benefits to the utility, as you heard me mention, a lot of our utility partners are exclusively promoting this device to their ratepayers. We've really kind of broken down the benefit into 3 sections. First is improved efficiency. Simply by helping homeowners better understand their water use, breaking it out so that they can see exactly where water is being used, we see a reduction between 10 to 20% in their overall consumption. With high water users, it's a little closer to 20. With some of our more kind of generally available programs where this device is made available to all ratepayers, it's closer to 10%. We also see really unique customer service benefits and customer satisfaction benefits for the utility. When we've surveyed, and this is a pretty robust statistic, but when we've surveyed users that have participated in our utility programs, almost precisely 2/3 of them have said they feel less of a need to call their utility, and they have a much more positive opinion of their utility after using Flume. Again, with our programs, these are designed so that the utility is actually subsidizing the device, and really the benefit of using it is something experienced by the utility and homeowner alike. And then finally, just kind of touching on that leak detection element. Another thing that we survey on and that we have statistics in the app around is how often we're generating leak alerts. Very consistently, 2/3 of our customers discover a leak in their home within the first month of using Flume. Now, these aren't always catastrophic, basement flooding leaks, but nonetheless, they're very important to track down and, ensure that no damage is being experienced by the home. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a in the wild example of what our utility programs look like. San Antonio Water System is a partner of ours. They have been for, I want to say about 1.5 years now. We have distributed, I believe it's into the tens of thousands of devices in the San Antonio Water System service area. And what we've done here is we've created co-branded landing pages that San Antonio can direct their ratepayers to get the device net of their rebate amount. So this is a device that typically retails for $199. In this case, we've actually reduced the cost of the device to San Antonio residents to around that $150 range. And then net of the San Antonio rebate, it's only $22 to that homeowner. So you can imagine that there's some kind of elasticity experience with that, right? Where we're able to address a clientele, a customer base that otherwise couldn't extend themselves on $200, and San Antonio benefits in the ways that we described on the previous slide. Next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of list some of the other utility partners that we've worked with here. These are primarily in the West, but they do span the United States. Again, typically our go-to-market with these utility partners is direct distribution programs. There are some of these that are generally available rebates where, other devices such as Flow, Fin, some of the others in the category have access to subsidy and rebates as well. Next slide, please. I've spoken quite a bit about kind of our ability to divide or separate indoor and outdoor demand. With many of our programs, as we distribute more units to a service area, we can extract very, very interesting demand insights around how people are using their water and actually serve that up to the utility. The utility benefits from that in that they can much better forecast future demand. They can inform efficiency programming by saying, hey, look how much water people are using outdoors. If we pair this up with ET data, we can tell that they're relatively inefficient. There's a myriad of use cases where these data are useful in the aggregate, and that's something that we serve up to our utility partners. In fact, and I'm sure many of the people on the call are aware of California's water efficiency framework, but California's Department of Water Resources actually uses Flume to inform their GPCD targets, or those gallons per capita daily targets. So it's very, very accurate at actually kind of understanding exactly where water is being used, and we can serve that up in an aggregated fashion. To bring that to life, let's actually go on to the next slide here. So what I'm showing here, each horizontal line is a day in the month. My y-axis for each of those, so kind of the height of it, actually represents water use within that day interval. And what you can see here is kind of different spikes throughout the course of the day where people are using water in their homes. You can see very, very large spikes, kind of early morning and at night. That's kind of what those tall ones are there. If you don't mind going on to the next slide. So what we're doing is we're looking at these water use trends, and we can actually separate them and say, hey, this is irrigation. This is a water softener. This is a single home. So you can imagine in the aggregate what these data look like. If you don't mind going on to the next slide here. And this is exactly that, right? So this is a single service area where we've distributed thousands of devices. We can actually see over the course of, in this case, I think we're talking about I believe a week, we can actually see by hour exactly what water use looks like. The trend that I'd pick out here is that, we can see exactly what that peaking ratio is. So when irrigation is driving demand up, and we can also see where that trough is, where irrigation typically isn't happening, and a majority of use is actually indoor use. So here we've actually broken it out between indoor, outdoor, and overall use. Next slide, please.
Clay, this is Christina. Sorry to interrupt you. We're at time, so just if you could.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I'll finish on this one. So just really quick, want to show an example of what overall or what indoor water use looks like. Looking back at 2020 and during COVID. In this case, we've actually we saw a really huge peak both in Texas and California when lockdown orders went into effect. And that's what you're seeing kind of in that April timeframe with some attenuation on the back end. So if anyone is further interested in these data, I'd be more than happy to share them with you. We serve up reports to a number of our utility clients who use these again to inform demand planning, efficiency programs and whatnot. And they've really kind of become the standard for end use and understanding water data across the United States. Thank you again, and we'll look forward to the discussion.
Thanks so much, Clay. Sorry to cut you off there. I think the connection to demand planning and even trending around COVID sort of brings into reality what cities and communities are asking themselves in terms of, how they plan for future forecasts of water consumption with population and just normal challenges around changing geographies, communities, climate change, and then you throw COVID on top of that, and just having that data, I think, is really part of the discussion that I'm seeing. So thanks for sharing that perspective. We'll go to our next speaker here. If we can advance the slide, please. All right, so we're gonna sort of take a little bit of a shift away from conservation and really just talk about something that I think is parallel in terms of consumer at-home empowerment, but really looking at water quality. So I'm happy to introduce the founder of 120 Water, Megan Glover, who is the CEO. She is a co-founder and has been running the company. Congratulations on some recent successes of additional funding as you've scaled your business. 120 Water is a data and software organization, and Megan has extensive experience in this space. Prior to founding 120 Water, she has spent over 15 years as an executive building and scaling other software-based businesses. So not a water professional from the start, but really coming into water with a broad skill set and really transforming our industry. So I look forward to hearing from Megan. Megan, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Megan Glover, co-founder and CEO of 120 Water. So why do we exist, and where does 120 Water play from source to tap? We are really focused on many of the critical issues around water quality that are facing water professionals today. So just a few key, very critical issues that we help water professionals at the agency and as well as water utility level work on. First, net new regulations. So there are more regulations on the water quality side than ever facing water professionals, and it's immense burden, not only to the operation, but how they communicate that out to their constituents, customers, boards, etc. The other thing is aging infrastructure. I know a very big topic right now. We talked about that in the green room and all of the potential funding, but truly it's needed. Much of our infrastructure has exceeded its useful life, and it is contributing to massive water quality issues across the country with regards to our aging infrastructure. And simply put, the status quo is untenable as to how our water utility professionals respond to these massive demands. There's simply not enough dollars or people to throw at the problem. And therefore, we have to think about how digital transformation can really help evolve our processes and our systems to really build resilient water utility operations now and into the future. So next slide. Just to hammer that home, the final lead and copper rule revisions, by far the most complex compliance as part of the Safe Drinking Water Act, and it just is about to get a lot more complex. First changes to that rule over 30 years, and our friends at ASWA estimate that it's going to be about $100 million burden for water professionals across the US. So adding about $100 million of just operational burden to execute the new lead and copper rule revisions. So massive changes, massive burden, and we have to find better modern ways to adapt and comply with these legislations. So next. So 120 Water, we are part of that solution. Again, we are a digital water platform, and that platform consists of cloud software, point of use kits and services that government agencies and water systems use to modernize their water quality programs. So we work over 20 states, including 5 statewide contracts, specifically on their water quality programs. Next slide. And we've done more programs than any other entity in the United States. So since we were founded 5 years ago, we've done tens of thousands sampling programs, primarily for lead reduction programs across 20 states. And, over not only are we kind of that end-to-end solution for lead reduction program management, but we've also started to extend our capabilities beyond lead. And one example of that was this year when we launched our wastewater-based monitoring program to help our customers monitor the presence of COVID within their distribution system to track hotspots. And now those programs are being used to detect vaccine efficacy in very vulnerable populations. So again, really extending that platform capability into other programs that our customers are tasked with executing at scale. So next slide, please. So how do we do that? We start with data. Data. Oftentimes we go into a state or a water system and their data is very fragmented across their operation. They have big data warehouses which store GIS data, customer data, LIMS data. What 120 Water does is we come in and we aggregate the most critical data pieces needed to run that program. And then we have software and automated workflows that help them take manual tasks and automate them. So we take the data in, we then automate certain workflows inclusive of our point of use kits that are triggered to either facilities or the end user. And our kits can either be used for sampling, or we also have filtration kits in the case of needing to use lead reduction or offer kind of a reduction after an exceedance has occurred, or there's construction going in the distribution system. They need to provide a safe way to drink their tap water. And then finally, once we get that analysis data back into our system, we're able to help them complete that compliance workflow by triggering the necessary communications, not only to customers, but also regulators and other stakeholders as part of their program. So next slide, please. Because we are modern and built in the cloud, our capabilities are very extensible and modular. What I mean is we meet our customers where they are. We have some customers running their entire lead reduction program on 120, or some people just using us for lead and copper rule compliance. And we're able to do that because the way we configured our platform is to be very modular and meeting our customers and their tech stack in terms of where they need and what capabilities they need to more efficiently run their program. Next slide, please. So what you get is essentially what we like to say is, I'm going to take it out of tech and data words and say, so what is it exactly? We consider ourselves the TurboTax for compliance management, and our point of use kits are really the Amazon of fulfillment. And when you put those together, you really have 120 Water, which is that end-to-end solution that our customers use to manage their programs. Next slide. So just to kind of tidy this up in a case study and how this actually impacts the end user. One of my favorite stories, Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority is a customer of 120 Water, and we came in as they were offering a consumer request program. So they were having some lead issues and wanted to offer free water sampling for all of their customers. And it was an overwhelming success, so much so that they were sitting on a 4,000 kit backlog of consumer requests. It was actually taking them 4 months to fulfill those kits because they only had one field user who was distributing them across the entire city. So with 120 Water's platform, software kits, we were able to go in and take that 4,000 kit backlog, shrink that to 14 days. So fulfill all of those water sample kits within 14 days and bring their cost down from $200 a sample to $60 per sample. And most importantly, automate all of those results and important communication back to the end user within 24 hours. And it was currently taking them 30 days to issue all of that communication back to the end user to reassure them that their tap water is safe to drink. So next slide, please. Our team, yes, as was mentioned, my background, we have a great background of folks who are both data and software veterans, but we also have an enormous team of advisors and internal staff that come directly from water. So it's a pretty powerful combination when you put those two expertise together, both the power of best of breed software and data and best of breed water quality professionals, and it's a pretty powerhouse team. Next slide, please. And then finally, again, we've been doing this for over 5 years, recognized leader of end-to-end solution of providing lead reduction software for water utility professionals and government agencies. And we've been recognized by such between GovTech, IL Utilities, Rise of the Rest, and Imagine H2O. So recognized and proven in the industry. And I think, next slide. Okay, great. Yes, anyone has any questions, let me know. Hopefully I was able to get us back on track and provide some great information for some dialogue.
Thanks, Megan. Really appreciated your perspective, and I'm looking forward to diving into some conversation. I think one thing that I see that you've set a really great example is how to start with the consumer in mind, but how to bring that value proposition to the region through partnership with the municipality. So I think that's a really great point of discussion for us, perhaps during the Q&A. So we have our last presenter, John Bell, who is the co-founder of Greater Water Systems. Last but not least, just a really quick introduction on John. He's the Chief Commercial Officer and again, co-founder. He'll introduce the technology, so I won't give into any background, but a fun fact to John, I'll just throw out there, is that he is a former sports broadcaster. So John, I'm going to expect, to bring us home with a really robust presentation here. So I'm just going to hand it off to you so you can dive right in.
Yes, the pressure's on. I mean, if you knew my background and my wildest dreams, I'd never think I'd be sitting in a parking lot doing a Zoom call, talking to water stakeholders and technology experts. But yeah, glad to be here. I'm, a former sports broadcaster, host of a couple of TV shows on HG, and here we are talking about gray water. So yeah, thanks again for the opportunity. So we can slide to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. So we're after water, and we want to reuse that water. So we do it in two ways. We've got a residential product called the Greater Home and a commercial building solution, which is more for schools, hotels, condos, rec centers. But at the end of the day, we're typically capturing shower and bath water, and in most cases, we're reusing that to flush toilets. We do a lot of storm water and rainwater reuse for irrigation. Rainwater is also great for cooling towers. So commercial, a little bit more diversified, residential, a bit more specific. Next slide, please. And this presentation will focus directly on the residential sector, which is kind of close to my heart. When you think of the macro level, let's go 30 feet up, 2-3 stories into a home. And you look at the bathrooms. Most interior water usage happens in a bathroom. Showers and baths, roughly 25 to 30%, and toilets, 20 to 25%. Next slide. And this is a question, really why the three founders founded Greater. I mean, we always ask this, why are we flushing toilets with perfectly good drinking water? I mean, it's crazy. It's one of the nuttiest things I think we do with water. And why are we sending that down to the sewer without reusing it? Next slide. And so with the greater home, we answer that question. You don't have to. So we capture shower and bath water. We reuse that, reducing indoor consumption by as much as 25%. And I would say it's one of the single greatest water conservation appliances for new homes. Next slide. This is a video that will do some talking for me, and it'll give you a better idea of how our technology works. So you can play that for me, Jeff. Introducing the Greater Home by Greater Water Systems, the first cost-effective residential gray water recycling system. Here's how it works. In a typical home, more than half of the interior water consumption happens in bathrooms, with shower and bath water accounting for approximately 30%, and toilet flushing close to 25%. That means nearly a quarter of all water used in the home is flushed right down the drain. In the greater home, shower and bath water are treated and then reused for toilet flushing. Just 2 showers a day will typically meet the demands for a family of 4. Here's how the system works. First, gray water from tubs and showers are directed to the greater home. The gray water enters our patented self-cleaning pre-filter where hair and large solid particles are removed. It then enters the main collection tank where our self-cleaning ultra-filter removes microorganisms, remaining solids, and some of the soap in the water. The filtered water is then passed through absorption media that remove all remaining soaps and surfactants. The water is then stored until the toilet is flushed. If there is too much incoming gray water, there's an overflow and the surplus will go down the drain. And if not enough is available, we are still tied to city water to maintain a minimum level of water to keep toilets flushing. Because our filters are self-cleaning, maintenance is a breeze as well. Just fill up the chlorine and exchange the absorption media once a year. And the system delivers a near potable water quality meeting the requirements of NSF 350, the most demanding standard for gray water. And with a greater controller, the homeowner has a full analysis of performance, savings, maintenance reminders, and tutorials available at the touch of a finger. With the greater home, the benefits are clear. As water costs continue to rise, your water savings will increase too. It makes no sense to be flushing toilets with perfectly good drinking water. And now with the greater home, you don't have to. Next slide, Jesse. We've done a number of pilots, and our most recent one right now is happening in Colorado. It's in partnership with the Colorado Water Conservation Board, Denver Water, Lennar Homes, and leak detection is actually involved in this as well. First gray water systems in the state of Colorado that are NSF 350 approved. And what we're trying to do is really showcase the savings for a family of 4. So, we're trying to be in the sort of 90% efficiency reclaimed water. You can't control consumer behavior and occupant behavior. And we're trying to target about a 9,000 gallon total savings. And the beauty of gray water, you're not only saving on the potable in, but you're also saving on the sanitary and the waste side out. So for a number of municipalities, it's not just so much about saving water, it could be about capacity and infrastructure issues on the sanitary side. And so that's the benefits of gray water. So this pilot's 40 homes, and the next wave of 21 will start rolling out in early summer. Next slide, please. These are what systems look like installed. Up in the upper right corner would be a project with Lennar. That's the one in Colorado. So typical construction in Colorado might be 2-story and a basement. So our unit would go in the basement. Below that, that's an Arizona project. And so our unit would go inside the garage in warm climates like Texas, California, and Florida. And the one in the middle is an Ontario install. Again, that's in a basement as well. Installs are done in about 2 hours. We provide a backflow preventer, and PEX connections are made to the unit. The plumbing is pretty simple on the in, isolating the gray water and capturing the shower and bath water. And like I said, we try to have plumbers doing our installs within 2 hours. Next slide. As I summarize it, and this is why I love being part of this panel, I'm an advocate of all water solutions and savings, and we really advocate what I call the sustainable water solution. And really that's involving leak detection, on the front end. If you're having water come in, you've got to protect that and you've got to find ways to save water. So that's the benefit of leak detection. With shower and bath water reuse, I want that water, so we try to save and reuse that water and flush toilets. And then obviously we could use our gray water for irrigation with smart irrigation controllers. So all the technologies, on the panel today are very synergistic of what I'm trying to advocate with builders. And our driver really is working with municipalities and builders and trying to drive front end incentives. So the builders' biggest pain points for them, especially in Colorado, is tap fees. Probably the highest cost of connection fees in North America, between $20,000 and $50,000 per house. So we're trying to drive front end incentives that could see tap fee discounts, density or allocation bonuses, expedite permits, help developers assist with site plan approval, because water, could be what's standing in the way. Obviously, the municipalities will benefit, reducing the load on their infrastructure. They're meeting conservation targets, they're saving water, they're protecting growth security. And at the end of the day, the homeowners win. We're about saving water. As we all know, water is relatively inexpensive. In certain markets, it's obviously higher than others, but water is always going up. And we're trying to reduce homeowners' water bills between 20 or 25% when it's all said and done. Next slide. And that's a wrap from the parking lot in Tottenham, Ontario.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Alrighty, so we're going to open it up to some questions, and we have some already identified from the audience. So thank you to those that have submitted questions. And if you have any, please feel free to drop it in the chat. I do see that some of the speakers are responding to those questions directly. So encourage you to get your questions out there. And if we don't dialogue about it, our speakers can hopefully address and provide any perspective directly there. So I think, we're hopefully at the end of this pandemic. I know we talk about it quite a bit. And I think just in terms of the context of this discussion, thinking about how technology has been accelerated or potentially stagnant based on the pandemic would be really interesting to hear from you all, from sensoring, at home, looking at flow, looking at efficiency and conservation. Are you seeing increased demand? And then from water quality, from the consumer, the utility side, are you seeing increased demand? Is there increased demand for gray water use? So I think I want to do like what I'll call a whip. We'll just whip around the panelists and get a really quick response. So if you can keep it to 15 to 30 seconds, your perspective, that would be great. So John, I'm going to start with you since you were the last one speaking.
Sure. I mean, there was a study recently done out of California that, and we focus a lot on residential, right? So the demand and pressures on residential homes gone up, maybe in the 10 to 15% range, with so many people obviously working from home, showering more and flushing toilets more. Now that obviously will change as we get to, back to normal, and the virtual world will come in and out. So I'm not too sure where it's going to land. But at the end of the day, I think there has been just a realization of, look, residential construction water pressure is increasing, and COVID has had a bit of an impact to that. And we see that, as a benefit to our solution, because I'm not showering as long as they want. The reality is, because every gallon's going to be 0 gallons for flush, because we're going to reuse that water to flush toilets.
Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to move it on. We're going to whip around to you, Paul. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen an increase in water consumption from the homeowner's perspective. That's obvious with everybody being home. With that, I think we're at the beginning of seeing what kind of results that has as it relates to water loss claims. I think that it's actually tracking toward less claims of water damage, just because more people are home, so you're less likely to have leaving something on and being away. People aren't traveling as much, so you have a lot less damage as it relates to second homes, issues occurring when people are on the road. But as it relates to overall consumption, just echoing exactly what John said, increases in consumption. We've seen, I think, a macro trend of awareness in home improvement projects now that people are home all the time. So there's been a big pickup there through kind of the consumer retail channels, a la Home Depot, Amazon, et cetera. And I just think, again, for all of the companies in this kind of emerging space, the number one issue that we all face is customer awareness that there's even our solution in the market. And so being able to demonstrate, that there's more adoption, I think is a very good thing for all of us across just the awareness in the space.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I think that's an interesting perspective. Megan, going to hand it off to you. Oh, you look frozen. I'm going to go to you, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I'd say like as a result of growth, we're seeing more conservation because we're having more and more controllers installed. But Google Trends does a rising retail categories, and now this is the second year in a row. If you were to look at it right now, year over year, where sprinkler controller is the #1 retail category, and our Ratio is the #1 key search word. So we're seeing significant growth as a result of people being at home and engaging with their outdoor space.
Interesting. Well, a lot of the same perspectives here. Clay, I'll end it with you.
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Paul and Chris have said. I think a major tailwind for us has been the fact that people have been spending more time in their homes, right? And that is we've just seen a pretty drastic increase in shopping volumes. Despite that, right? Like, this is still a category that kind of lacks awareness, and I think that's something that can be said about all water efficiency or water conservation products. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Well, I think just on this topic and for all of you and just for everyone that's on the call, it will be really interesting to see as a silver lining how consumer awareness and engagement, just having an environmental change just being in our respective places for so long, how that consumer behavior is going to pull the market a bit differently. So I wanted to go with a different type of question on data. So I believe this was Lauren that asked this question on data management and privacy. So for those that are working with the utility and sharing consumer data with the utility, are you seeing any pushback in terms of privacy issues? Megan, you didn't have a chance to answer the last question, so I'll start with you on that one. I know the utility is contracting you, and actually you're in a unique space around the water quality, but how's that data sharing and privacy angle working for you? How are you navigating that?
Yes, yeah, fingers crossed my internet stays stable too. Actually, I think this industry is very much lagging in terms of data privacy and security to begin with. So if anything, we are actually introducing more secure processes in a way to deliver what we call PII, which is personal identifiable information. Sharing Excel sheets via email is not a very secure way to be delivering personal information. So if anything, actually, it's part of our value proposition in terms of, why would you use, one system to share data back and forth rather than extract it from system to system and then just send the information out there. So, security is something that is the foundation of how we're built and what we do. So we actually don't see pushback. If anything, it's just kind of modernizing how they actually deliver information and what they deliver to the customer. So.
Yeah. That's great. And then probably in your world, the end user, being the customers, want their data to be out there in terms of water quality, because that's what creates change in terms of better operational and treatment and investment by the water utility. I want to ask the same question to Paul and Chris, because you had referenced utility partnerships and in terms of using your technologies to look at water usage, efficiency, and conservation. Cities, municipalities are implementing advanced metering. They're wanting to look at their water usage to their service connection. And I'm sure with your projects, you're sharing that information potentially back to the utility. So how are you navigating that? And is that an issue for any of your users that are using it in their homes or multi-unit buildings? Paul, if you wanted to jump in first.
Yeah, sure. So we haven't seen, we've only seen a couple requests from folks coming through around data sharing issues. I think, frankly, most people expect that they install an internet connected device in their home, that there's going to be data sharing around it. We try to be as transparent as we can in what we're doing with the data. When you go through and just accept the terms and conditions like you would with other smart home device, like a Ring doorbell. So I think as the prevalence of the smart home category continues to expand dramatically, the data sharing is less and less of a concern. At least for our product, I don't know about the other IoT folks on the line here, but if somebody does come and say, hey, delete me, for example, like delete all my data, we actually can't provide our service to them because we need to actually have the data to be able to do the leak detection and shut off and alert them and all that kind of stuff. So if somebody sends a delete request, they've now just, got something installed in line on their pipe that doesn't function. But as it relates to sharing data with utilities and insurance companies, our primary sources of recipients of the data we capture, we don't share PII unless the customer expressly consents to that to get an insurance discount or a utility rebate. But otherwise, we don't generally see a problem with that in the market. I think it's becoming pretty expected that the data is shared in some capacity.
That's great. Thanks, Paul. What about you, Chris? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost repeat what Paul just said. So,
Okay.
I probably won't. The only thing I would add is that we use a tool called Data Grail, and to ensure CCPA compliance, and then we just use that on a delete request to remove all PII through all the systems. So we've done a good job of weaving that into all data systems that we use.
Okay, great. And there's a couple questions in the chat that are very product specific. So I want to encourage you all to perhaps answer that directly in the chat. One of the questions, one for John, was around whether or not Gray TiR can capture heat, which I think is really great. So that's definitely something that I think could be an opportunity that consumers are looking at. So please feel free to respond to that, John, and hopefully others can see it. And then for Chris, if you wanted to provide some information on the Thrive product and the efficacy, there's some folks that would be interested in that. So for the sake of time, and I see Cynthia's camera coming on, so meaning we're coming to an end, I want to ask a closing question to all of you. And the closing question is, we sort of see what the current state is. You all are pushing your technology into the market. Consumer behavior is changing. A lot of that's being influenced by just the world around us outside of water. Consumers, we all want and expect a lot more, and that is coming into water whether we like it or not. So we sort of see the current state, we see where we're heading. I'd like to quickly get a perspective from you all of where you think we're going to be in 5 years in terms of smart technology and focusing on the efficiency, conservation, the customer side being the users. So I'll ask you all just for a couple thoughts and perspectives there, where we're going to be in 5 years. Megan, I'll start with you.
Connected to the consumer, how they want to receive information, what they want to receive, and to better inform their behaviors and habits. So I think we can get there in 5 years with the right technology.
Great. I agree with you. All right, Chris, going to you next.
For us, it's connected cultivation, and really like how we, for lack of a better word, terraform outdoor yards to be more sustainable, with biology, with watering practices, with native plants. That's where we're going.
Great. Thanks, Chris. All right, Clay, what about you?
Yeah, perhaps is a strong word, but I think it's the triumph of distributed infrastructures and technologies over those that are more traditional, right? I mean, most of the solutions that we're talking about now, rely on consumer pull through and adoption, and that is accelerating at a pace that far exceeds the development of centralized or even decentralized infrastructure.
Great,
thanks. Paul, going to you next.
Can't tell if Clay's answer was a blockchain response. that almost seemed like he's gonna like Flume's gonna ICO or something. No, I think with 5 years might be a bit aggressive on this. I still think in 5 years we'll be in, I don't think we'll be at the peak of the adoption bell. I think we'll still be in the early adopter phase just based on how big the market is. And when you take all of the combined technology in the space, I mean, I still don't think it's going to be nearing 50% adoption or even 25% adoption in the whole space in 5 years. I mean, so I think we've got a long way to run on that. But if I were to take that out like 10 years, I think we're really to the point where this type of technology across all of our products together is a smoke detector. it should be mandated by the government in every home to have all of these systems that we're talking about, because there is only winners in the value chain, right? You're saving more water, you have less damage, you have more knowledge, you have, less energy expended. This to me, the future of this whole category is that of smoke detectors, where it is totally ubiquitous in every property.
It's really interesting and bold, Paul, to say that, but that is reality outside of the US. So we know it's being done and the technology's there. So I really appreciate that perspective. All right, John, bring it on home with your sports announcer voice. I want to hear your perspective here.
Well, I got to dumb it down because I'm following a litigator and he's far more smart than I am. I love the way Paul summed it up. For our space, look, we're newer, right? These guys are much more advanced, and our technology in 5 years certainly will not be at mass adoption. Our biggest challenge is regulatory hurdles, and that's really the code, right? There's certain jurisdictions where gray water recycling for indoor use isn't allowed. In Colorado, there's a specific reg that has to be adopted. So my biggest challenge and our biggest challenge for our company is moving the market on the code first. But I agree with Paul says. One day these technologies will all be in the code. They all make sense, but it takes time. And, I would just close, because we're all entrepreneurs here, it's a heavy lift. And if we don't have incentives, certainly for our technology, and if I don't have lobbyists and, PR people, and educators and getting the municipalities, it's just a slow, long process. So 5 years would be, it's not going to happen for us in 5 years, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, a good mix of sort of reality and perspective, I think, from all of you, but definitely optimism. And I think just to sort of close with my own remarks, I work very closely with the municipalities, the water utilities globally, and particularly here in the US. And to see your solutions really take off, I think is really going to transform and challenge the way that water resources are managed and how cities and utilities collaborate to essentially, have sustainable communities around water resource. So I think really connecting with the consumer, the users, you and I are neighbors, that is definitely an untapped market, and feel very hopeful about what you guys can do to really just shift the paradigm. So keep up the good work. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit more about what you do. And I'll hand it back to Cynthia to bring us to a close.
Great. Thanks so much, Christina and the entire panel. This was a really interesting and exciting session, and I'm very inspired by the work of all of you innovators and the potential for these products to advance, the climate resilient future that we're all looking for. For me, what was interesting about this very last piece with you all giving this your perspective on where we're going. I don't know how many of you know this, but WaterNow's beginning mission, was to facilitate the widespread adoption of drinking water. To facilitate the widespread adoption of sustainable water strategies. And that's really what you're all talking about. So I think I'll add to all of your prognostications. And I think, Paul, I'm really right where you are. I don't know if we're like having a litigator bonding moment or what, but I do think that your point about it's not going to be just the market. There need to be policies, incentives, and I would say partners, right? You're obviously all here, you're all partners with WaterNow, and there are many of our colleagues in the nonprofit space, the academic space, that are also working in this field. And I think the more that we can be connecting the tech world to those of us who are also working in that policy realm to try to advance innovation, to help utilities find the way to finance the kinds of solutions you're coming up with, the better. So I'll just add that as my last piece. I want to do a quick shout out to thank all of our sponsors, many of whom are you, for supporting this event. We couldn't do our work without your support. And I want to say finally to everybody who's attending, it's been a great few days with you here at Tap and Resilience. And we're closing out after this session with a few more networking lounges where you can follow up with some of these folks as well as the other summit sponsors. So thanks again to Christina and everybody on the panel. And thanks for everybody for taking a moment to do our post-summit survey. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Good to see you all.
Thanks very much.